It's Rut and River.
Yes.
Correct.
R-U-T.
I rest my beard hair on it.
And then you know you're there.
Like a nice, gentle little pillow for my beard.
Right.
And then I'm all up in it.
Oh.
I'm like Kobe beef for sharks.
Can I ask you, what made you guys call me up about, well, this?
That's what tickles our fancy.
Exactly.
Okay.
Thought the Rocky Mountains would be rockier.
John Denver is not accurate.
Man.
A guy like you, who has absolutely no clue, and I can hear it in your voice, that, I mean, you're a blank canvas. I mean, I can just start with you like from scratch.
You're going to tell me, a grown man, you're telling me what lure to use and how to fish?
You guys didn't snap your Whopper Popper off either, though. Sorry, I blew up over that.
We are back. This is the Rut and River Pursuits podcast. We are sitting in Casa Argenta. No, wait a minute. I'm
Different
sorry.
spot.
Yeah, that's in Honduras. We're sitting down in Ryan's basement tonight at Casa Madera.
There you go.
And I knew I'd get that wrong
Yeah.
as soon as I said it. But I'm excited tonight.
Yeah?
We have somebody on the phone, which we have not had really before.
Yeah.
Like our bread and butter,
Yeah.
our lifeblood of water in the Susquehanna here in Pennsylvania. We have a guide on the Susquehanna tonight. But before I introduce him, who's with me?
This is Deke. I don't believe that for a minute.
No, you can't pull that one
Bucky,
off.
guys. Good try, Bucky. Hey, I'm Ryan.
I'm Steve.
Excellent. So I'm excited. And if you guys, before I get started, you have to go check this guy's IG account out because you could scroll for days on exactly what the Susquehanna means to us.
Yeah.
Because this guy is it. Like he's got it under wraps. I think he's got it figured out. We say all the time, you never have it all figured out. But Joe Raymond is with us tonight.
Welcome,
Guide Joe Raymond, and he's from Susquehanna.
What's up, guys?
He's from Susquehanna Smallmouth Guides. Is that correct?
Susquehanna Smallmouth Guides. You got it.
Nice. I'm glad to have you on the phone, Joe.
Yeah, man. Glad to be here.
How'd you do today, bud?
We always catch them.
This is crazy.
We always catch a couple.
How? This is like a 40 mile an hour winds. I thought my house was going to blow down last night. There was snow flying. If you can catch them today, you're doing something right.
Yeah, I mean, I was up for the challenge, Wow. Basically, it's coming to an end, so I looked at it as, one last opportunity to get out there and catch a couple fish.
Yeah.
We found an area that was kind of sheltered, and I mean, we didn't completely tear them up. We were out for a few hours and probably caught 20 fish.
So,
just all right.
Well, I've been out for a couple hours and caught a fish, so that still sounds like a pretty good day.
Yeah.
Right,
man.
Well, you never know what's going to happen this time of the year.
I guess.
I mean, we always catch fish. I've never had anybody skunk, but you don't know what you're going to get into this time of the year when the water temperature's in the 30s. It was 37 degrees.
Was it?
Starting off this morning, and it definitely didn't warm up at all while we were out there, and we were fighting the wind.
No.
Every bite, you're working hard for every bite, and every time you get one, it's rewarding as heck.
So aside from like the river icing up and those big giant ice floats that pile up at the base of the bridges, is there a time when the river does actually shut off?
Yeah, I mean, we're there. This is pretty much the end of it as far as I'm concerned. I towed my boat home, and I know next week it's going to go into there's going to be a couple of days in the 40s again. But if you look at the forecast, you got to look at, the lows at night, and it's dropping down into the 20s.
Yeah.
It's just going to pull the water temperature down. Once it gets that 37, 36 degree mark, it starts to get kind of screwy, and then going down into 35, 34, you can still catch them, but you got to know exactly where they're at. You got to go right to them and just let a bait sit in their face and just hang on. Pretty much, sit down, play on your phone, hold on to your rod, keep your line tight, and just wait for a bite. The less you do, the better.
So there's that much difference in the activity in just a couple degrees.
Yeah, once you start getting into that 30-degree range, we've had days where it's like 38, 39 that we've caught well over 100 fish, and then you have a couple days of cold weather, and it just pushes you right back to catching, 20 or 30.
Joe, is that for all bass or is that just smallmouth?
It's river smallmouth. I mean, smallmouth in general are more of like a cold water fish. They'll stay more active in the colder water than largemouth. But river fish, especially because these fish are always fighting current. They're always, moving around, and they need to feed. Their metabolism's still going, and they need to feed to keep going.
That makes sense.
They just can't shut down. So river fish are different than like stillwater lake fish.
I never considered that.
Yeah, they're going to eat more. You're going to have more success fishing for river fish in cold water.
Yeah,
and they'll eat all through the winter, especially like the larger ones. Even, when there's ice and stuff out there, they're still eating, but it's going to be in a much smaller window.
Yeah.
It's harder to throw topwater then.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, right.
It's funny you said that because
Whopper Popper.
How many times have we fished Lake Mead and through the ice, and I've caught like 3 bass in the 13, 14 years I've been fishing it.
Yeah.
The largemouth in there just seem to go, almost dormant.
With ice fishing, I've never done it, but I know a decent amount about it. It's the same deal where you got to know right where those fish are at. If you know exactly where they're holding and you dangle something down there in front of them and you're patient enough, you're going to catch them, especially, a larger fish it's going to have to feed every day.
Yeah.
And if something comes along, you might drop something in front of them and they'll watch it for a freaking hour.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they'll just decide to come up and grab it. Yeah.
Joe, before you were a smallmouth guide, what'd you do? What got you into fishing?
Well, I was always into fishing, growing up. My uncle had a farm with a creek running through it. And, I grew up really just splashing around in the creeks, and we would catch carp and bass and catfish and all kinds of stuff. And I always, looked forward to, summer days with Dad getting off of work and hoping that he would take us either to the Conestoga or, sometimes we would venture out to the Susquehanna. But I guess my dad's the one who got me into it. And I just was always, into it as a child.
So you grew up pretty locally then, huh?
Yeah, I grew up in Lancaster County. My uncle's farm was in Burdenham. Mill Creek ran through it. And it's actually it's an awesome fishery. His land is private, but there's a stretch of creek that runs down through there that just has giant bass, wow, huge. There's probably 6 and 7 pound largemouth in it. I know there are. Yeah, they're monsters. But back in the day, I actually had more fun catching carp.
Yeah.
There was huge carp in the creek, and there was a lot of mulberry trees along the banks, and when the mulberries would start blooming or whatever, getting on the trees, they'd drop in the water, and the carp were always underneath there feeding on them. So it was so easy to just put a mulberry on a hook and drop it in the water. Anybody could catch them. And
carp eat mulberries.
Yeah, if you've ever caught a carp, you know how hard they pull.
I thought, Stevie, you were speaking Latin there.
Yeah.
Carpe mulberry.
Mulberries, yeah. So that's kind of what got me into it. And,
cool.
I just always had that. I just was always an outdoorsy kind of person. Growing up, going into my teenage years, I kind of got out of it. I got more into, doing what kids do when they're in high school. And I also rode 4-wheeler a lot growing up, especially, having access to that farm. So it was a combination of the two. And then as I got older, it just kind of seemed like riding. I just enjoyed it more. There was still in that time period where people weren't crazy about kicking you off their land.
Right.
You could I really enjoyed that too. And then it turned into sport bikes and cars,
Yeah.
And I just kind of put fishing on hold for a little while. I really got into sport bikes. There was always the fear of, it was a rush. It was an adrenaline rush riding those things. But every time you got off of it, it was like, thank God I'm still alive. And thank God, we didn't get chased by the cops. Like, I just knew that I had to give it up. I just, it just wasn't a good thing. Eventually this is going to catch up. And, I'm the oldest of 3. My younger brother never really gave the fishing up. He always kind of, screwed around with it. And I think I was around 25. He talked me into going to the creek with him again. This is when I was still kind of into the riding, but knew that I had to get into something else. We went down to the creek and we caught a bunch of smallmouth, and that just kind of sparked it all over again. And I went from 0 to 100 with fishing, basically.
Nice.
Ended up with a boat within 2 or 3 months,
Oh, man.
and started screwing around, in all the local lakes, screwing around in the river some, but I did more of like the local lake deal. I spent a lot of time at Marsh Creek, even up around York, like Redmond, pretty much all the electric only lakes, Blue Marsh, Chambers. The boat that I had wasn't a great river boat. It was just a little guy. We would take it out on the river every now and then, but we got ourselves in trouble more than once.
Really?
We got ourselves in trouble. And once I really started figuring out the smallmouth thing out there in the river, it just kind of blew the lake fishing away. I mean, we'd go to the lake and there'd be some days. The best lake I found back then was Marsh Creek. And we had a couple days where we'd catch 50 or 60 fish, but it was in like May and June. Typically what would be the best time of, largemouth fishing, but then going to the river and finding out that you could have days like that all throughout the year. Mm-hmm. One thing just kept leading to another. My first boat was a sea nymph. Then I got a bass tracker. The bass tracker had a 90 prop. And I got around in the river all right with that. And
really?
I had it for about a year. And I got a Duracraft. That was my first jet boat. It had a 11580 Yamaha jet on it.
Wow.
And that kind of opened up a whole nother piece of river, from just the shallow stuff that I couldn't get into before. And I ran that for, I guess, 2 years, just really learned a lot in that period of time.
Hey, Joe. I got to ask you a question. It's still stuck in my head.
What's that, Bucky?
Your 90-horse bass tracker.
Oh, God.
I know a guy that happens to have one of those in his garage.
It doesn't idle worth a crap.
It doesn't idle worth a crap right now. But my question is how did you protect that prop in the Susquehanna?
It just didn't work. I mean, that's why I got a jet boat.
All right, so I'm going to let my buddy know.
I mean, you could try the pitchfork. I mean, guys will put a pitchfork down on their skag.
I've been telling him to sell that boat all
so
summer.
much with it. I assume it's probably yours.
Yeah, well,
Safe as
it
something.
may be.
Yeah. There's not a whole lot you can.
You
do
need to
there.
skag that pitchfork.
I want to do the pitchfork.
You
can try the
sell it.
pitchfork. You'll be able. You just don't want to go running around and trying to run around in shallow water. I mean, a pitchfork will let you idle around, and if you bump something, it gives you a little bit of protection.
Yeah, that's all I
mean,
need.
there's a reason why they came out with the jet.
Yeah, I hear you. I just
right.
Tell us about the boat you have now.
Yes. Where are you
the
at
boat
now?
I have now.
What do I need?
It's a rock-proof boat. So after my I guess I'll get back into. I had the Duracraft.
Yeah.
I had the Duracraft for like 2 years, and that opened up a whole nother area of river, just shallow water fishing. And I mean, I beat the snot out of it. When the river would get low over the summer, I was with my job at the time. For the most part, we were working 410s. So I'd end up having 3 days off in a row, and I'd just go straight up to the river and spend 3 days in a row, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday fishing. And it seemed like by Sunday every week I'd have to tow my boat home and get something patched up on it. And then, there was a couple winters, we knew the fish were still biting, but the water was low, and it just terrified me.
Yeah.
Going out there in that boat, just the fear of cracking something in 30-some degree water, opening up the boat and taking on water.
Oh, man.
So I knew that it was time. I knew I was serious enough about it. This is what I do. I want to get one of these boats with UHMW on the bottom that I don't have to worry about it anymore. So I started researching different boats, and ended up talking to a friend that had a rock-proof boat, and it actually turned out he was interested in selling it.
Joe, for my friends around the table that don't know what UHFM is,
UHMW.
UHMW.
Exactly.
UHMW stands for ultra high molecular weight. It's like it's
like
a high density plastic.
It's like the
more or less.
stopper on the front of an old school roller skate.
Yeah, it's extremely slick. And they put it on the boat, and it's like a sheet. It's almost like a sheetrock, like drywall. The way that they put it on the boat, they fasten it with screws, and it gives you peace of mind. You're not going to put a hole in the boat, and it's also really slick. Something else they use UHMW for is like artificial ice for skating rinks. It's slick.
Okay.
That stuff.
Yeah. I don't know if you've ever seen it. There's more and more of it coming out. Like it's almost like puzzle pieces you can put together, and you can lay out like an ice rink. You can put it on your patio out back.
Bucky,
to
you
practice.
should get that on your boat. Then you could practice your double toe loops in the off
There you
season.
go.
Back
There
from
you go.
when I did
But
Fire
yeah, it's
on
slick.
Ice.
Sauerkraut.
So if you hit a rock with it, you'll slide right over it. Like the rock won't bite into the aluminum, and it doesn't bite into the UHMW so much either. You just slide right over it. It's definitely important to have if you're getting serious about shallow water fishing with a jet boat.
Yes,
it's just peace of mind.
There's absolutely no substitute for knowing the river either. So it's
I mean that even the first after finding out about these boats, I actually wanted to buy this guy's boat, and I went out and test drove it and everything, and the thing ran freaking awesome. I mean, it was unbelievable how coming from an outboard jet boat to an inboard jet boat. I mean, the thing just ran. It handled so well. It handled like a jet ski. I could just do whatever I wanted to do with it. So I was going to buy his boat, and he wanted to get a new one, and he priced them out, and he was like, man, these things are a lot more now than what I expected. So he decided he wanted to hold on to it. His name's Tom Mills, and he's actually one of the guys that we kind of work together in this guiding thing now. This opened up a whole friendship, and running this boat for the first time. Great dude. I'm so glad that worked out, but I just ended up going to Rockproof them myself and working something out to get my first Rockproof boat, which is the model's the River Rocket. And I decided to call the boat, I put my own name on it, Rockzilla.
Nice.
And that's the boat build that you've got the pictures of on Instagram, right?
Yeah. So that was back in 2012, 2013. And since then I've built one every 2 years.
No kidding.
Huh.
Yeah, I got a deal worked out with the boat manufacturer. And I mean, for what I do, I pretty much have to turn them over every 2 years. If I, after running it for 2 years, and I know the river well enough now that I'm not going out and beating the snot out of it.
Yeah.
At 2 years, it still has good value in it. But if I run it for 4 years or something like that and put twice as many hours on, then people are thinking, well, I don't know. I put 150 or 200 hours a year on a motor. It takes most guys, a family guy, that gets out once a week or, whatever, it would take him 10 years to do that.
Right.
So I can sell a boat after 2 years, and the average person won't have anything to worry about, for 10 years. They got a good boat.
What I'm hearing then, Stevie,
Yeah.
we start saving our pennies.
Mm-hmm.
And we're just going to go ahead and call dibs now on your next boat. So by the time we've got our money saved up, you'll be ready to sell your next
saved our
one.
pennies. Yeah, you got to buy.
start saving your pennies for 20 years.
I'm calling dibs.
So,
There you go.
so Joe, because I'm very familiar with the rock-proof boats as well, and so when I was in Alaska, that's a newer concept in the last 20 years here in the East Coast, because like in Alaska, Washington, Oregon, Duckworth and Hughescraft and, Willie's boats and on and on and on, blah, blah, blah. Like they're used to shallow water running, beat to death boats,
Right.
inboard jets and things like that. And you just don't see those types of Blackhawks and stuff out on the East Coast. You just don't see them transported out here very often.
Right.
But, these are types of boats that are running 100 miles upriver, and carrying 3 moose back or, 2 grizzlies out and all the gear that you had for 2 months. And so when you get a boat here on the Susquehanna that has very limited spots you can fish, you can get into places where others can't, that are super unfished. And not only that, but just some really beautiful, beautiful parts of Pennsylvania that most guys don't get to see unless they're on a float trip, like with a kayak. Yeah. So
yeah,
these boats will. I mean, this technology, this whole boat design, it came from the West Coast. It's been trickling over here. What we need out here on the East Coast is, I think, a little different than what they need. I think our rivers are a little more harsh,
right?
Especially the Susquehanna with the solid rock, where you got to have. These boats out here are probably built stronger, just because of the rock pounding they got to go through. But it's to start it off, it did trickle from the West Coast.
Yeah. No, it did. I can remember when I was a kid, just a random thought. I remember we got jammed up on a rock as I was a kid, and my uncle Rusty was on the front of the boat, and my father was on the back of the boat, and we got stuck on this rock, and you couldn't really see it under the boat, but my dad stepped off the back of the boat, and he was about knee-deep standing on the rock to try to push the boat off. And me as a young child looked over at my Uncle Rusty as he jumped off the front of the boat to help him push it off, and he went under the water. The Susquehanna can be extremely deceiving.
Yeah.
When you're coming down, nothing's happening, and you can hit a truck-sized rock that you can't see.
Exactly. Yeah, it's something else. It's you really got to know what you're doing out there.
Yeah.
Joe, could you tell us about what a typical guided trip with you would look like? What's someone have to bring? What time do they show up? What's going to happen?
Yeah, I mean, I just ask guys, you got to get a fishing license, of course, and then, bring your food, drinks, dress right, sunglasses. I normally provide all the tackle. That seems to work best.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes guys want to bring their own, but I have what I know is going to work. So I if guys open up their car and they got a bunch of stuff that I don't think is going to work, a lot of times I'll just tell them to keep it.
So if they've got, like, for example, 20 different fishing rods and 8 different bags from rudders filled with lures,
Stevie, you're cool with that, right?
Yeah, I like to pack light. I don't like having a lot of clutter in the boat, and that's part of it too. I usually, even if they bring their stuff, I want to bring mine too, just in case it doesn't work.
Yeah.
You don't want to be tripping over rods and, just have a bunch of, mess
Stevie,
in the boat.
I think that's fun. I think that adds to the...
Joe, do you know how many rods Stevie brings on my boat? Like 20,
one at most 2.
Like 20 rods for a 2-hour fishing trip.
Yeah. Like today, I took 2 rods with me.
Did you?
Yeah.
And really, I only probably I would have been fine with 1. I kind of like that, just keeping things simple. At the beginning, first getting into it, I felt like I hate not to have it. I hate to get out there and not have, something. But the more time you spend out there, you just kind of learn what works, and, your confidence baits that you stick to.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just ask guys to bring the necessities, and I provide the rest, and we go out and we catch fish.
Do you ever bait fish, or are you primarily artificials?
I've never bait fished,
No.
Doing guided trips. You shouldn't have to. If you beat on an area, like, there's all kinds of different spots out there on the river, and, you pull up to a spot and catch them on artificial lures, you're not going to catch every single fish. I mean, eventually they'll get kind of, whatever's down there, they'll get kind of spooked and they'll stop biting and you move away. But if guys start beating on spots with live bait, it makes it dang near impossible to come back with artificials anytime soon afterwards and catch them.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it really screws it up. I see that every year. I mean, there's a lot of guys that do it. I mean, that's the easiest way to catch them. You put a minnow on a hook and drift it down through a spot that there's fish, and you'll catch every single one of them.
What size minnow would you recommend?
Here we go.
What size what?
I said, what size minnow would you recommend to drift it through and catch every single one of them?
Right.
He's asking for a friend.
Yeah, friend of mine wants to know.
Asking for a friend. I gotcha.
Do you think that the river fish can get wise to the artificials that you're throwing, like they would on a confined lake? Like, do the fish get educated?
Yeah,
in the river?
absolutely.
Really?
I mean, there's always new stuff coming along and stuff that's forgotten about, just because its effectiveness kind of falls off. The latest thing to hit the river, over the past couple years has been the stuff from Z-Man that's really been a game changer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're
Yep.
using that, I guess. How
Yeah.
How many
I
Ned
mean-
rigs do you lose on a typical trip?
Oh man, we go through them. You
See,
go through them,
Stevie,
but
you're
I
not
mean, in
alone.
my opinion, that Z-Man stuff is as close as you're going to get to live bait. A lot of times, I mean, it's almost like if you beat on a spot with Z-Man stuff, that Elastec,
Yeah.
it makes it hard to come back through afterwards and catch anything on artificial.
Right.
Or I shouldn't say artificial, and just regular soft plastic, plastisol products. It's just different. It's something that the fish haven't been initially, right off the bat, it was crazy. It's the Elastec floats. So when you put it on a jig head, it sits up on end, and then you have river current pushing against it. It never lays down, but it'll just kind of sit at an angle, and it's soft, gummy. It just has so much action, and it's still super productive. I mean, it might be slowing down a little bit, but it's still more productive than plastisol products. I mean, there's a lot of guys throwing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fish definitely get educated to stuff. More everybody. The river is gaining popularity, and everybody's finding out about these hot spots. And there's a lot of good fishermen out there. And I mean, you just can't go beat on the same spot day after day after day and think that those fish are going to go back there, especially the big ones. Like I can't ever remember, besides fish being on beds, I've never caught like the same fish off the same spot, a day later or a week later. You catch them and they leave. They, especially the big fish. I was actually just talking about this today. I think you stick a big fish and it almost feels violated, like not safe there anymore. And you just will not see that fish again.
He gone.
So as a guide, that has to be terribly challenging for someone.
It's extremely challenging. I mean, I pull it, the river is public water, so you can't act like you own it or like get out of here, but it does get frustrating some days. The pressure out there has increased. I mean, every year it's like it doubles, and it makes it, we always catch them. We always catch fish, but like, just a few years back, it used to be so easy for me. I fished about a 40-mile stretch of river, and I could pick a different boat ramp every day and just lay a milk run out. I mean, you could plan on hitting 10 spots, and if you catch 10 fish at each spot, then there's 100 fish. It's easy.
Yeah.
And I'd move up river, and I wouldn't really worry too much about anybody fishing those spots until I got back. But now it's like you pull off of a spot, and as soon as you pull off of it, especially the busy times of the year, somebody else is pulling right in.
I think it's even tougher too. Like I fished years of tournaments and recreational catfishing on the river, and every time we leave, a boat would take our spot. It's very easy for somebody to see you hauling in a big flathead or a bunch of channels, and then the next night there's 3 boats around where you were.
Yep.
And so I think I have a lot of catfishing friends that literally blank out their backgrounds and pictures, and they have to go the extra mile to keep their spot secret, but there's no secrets on the river. So
you have to. I mean, it can drive you nuts. It can really drive you nuts. And there are days that it does drive you nuts. I mean, I get off the water and I feel better once I get off the water, but you always think about, the good old days, what things used to be like. And until that fishery goes into decline, until it, hits a wall, every year there's going to be more and more people out there, and you just got to deal with it. I mean, the good thing is it's still better than anywhere else in the area.
Yeah.
I mean, nothing's quite like the Susquehanna in this.
Well, let's paint a picture for some of the people that aren't in Pennsylvania, though. So Joe's office is literally, here's what makes it worth it. If you have not seen Pennsylvania at daybreak coming down the Susquehanna with a little bit of fog coming off, maybe the residue of a mayfly hatch, if you've never flipped rocks over and seen Helger mites in the morning, like it's a magical magical place where even the highest frustrations melt away if you're, like on a topwater bite where throwing a popper in every smallmouth, you get 5 or 6 hits coming in on one run. It can be extremely worth it to. Some of that can just melt away, I'm sure. And I'm not talking to somebody that doesn't, see it on a regular basis. So,
right, it's awesome. I mean, it doesn't get much more beautiful than out there on the Susquehanna. It's definitely one of Pennsylvania's gems.
Yeah. How did JDC describe it? He thought he was in Jurassic Park the morning that it was foggy on both sides. He couldn't see either side of the river as we were wet wading.
Yeah.
Just a couple peaks.
Joe, do you think the fish had a little bit of a break this year with all the rain that we got?
That's such a good question.
And how high the river has been. Like, pretty much it seemed like every time it trended down, we got another rain and it went right back
How
up.
mad were you this year?
Oh, man, I was fit to be tied.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a mess, man. It was definitely a change of pace. I don't know. I mean, when the river goes high, when it gets high, they still get into certain areas. And initially it was pretty cool. There wasn't a lot of guys got freaked out by the high water and they stayed away. But, it's the same deal with social media. The guys that continued to go out and knew what they were doing drew attention to it, and guys figured it out. Enough people figured it out. I mean, you can still catch them. The fish definitely didn't get as much pressure as, normal. They normally would over the summer. I don't think that high water was hard on them. I mean, high water itself isn't that big of a deal, but some of those rains we got were just, I mean, it really screwed the water quality up. I mean, you went from, there was days where there was zero visibility out there.
And it didn't help.
And
with
for those
all
fish to run that water through their gills and everything, like it just, it can't be good for them.
Right.
I mean, they're just pumping sludge. They're living in sludge.
And I'm
sure. How do you feed? What do you do?
I'm sure it's extremely hard for them to find food when the water's rushing past them like that.
Yeah. And now I had read something here recently that there's the sludge that poured out now is now the silt that they're laying in now in this cold water, and they're thinking that that's what attributes to those sores that we see.
Really?
Possibly.
So I'm curious if we will see an uptick in that this summer.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's definitely been concerning. I've been seeing a lot of it too. I mean, every day we go out, we catch some fish that have, you catch one or two that has some kind of funk on it, something that you're just like, oh man, that poor fish.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the majority of them are healthy and they look good, but I don't know what it is. I don't know what that stuff is. Nobody really has a real solid answer on it.
How's that changed in the years you've been guiding? Have you noticed that that's gotten better or worse or stayed the same?
It comes and it goes. It just, that's the best way to put it. It comes and it goes. I don't know if it's, it doesn't seem like it's gotten any better.
Really?
I mean, you gotta look at what a river actually is. I mean, a river is just a big discharge pipe, and that river discharges water from, they say the Susquehanna watershed drains out 27,000 square miles of land. Wow. So that starts with, rain hitting the ground and, washing into the, creeks and streams, and spring water too, of course, but, just washing into all these little tributaries, and eventually it makes its way into that main river. And you got to think about what that brings with it.
27,000 square miles.
Yep.
27,000 square miles.
And who knows what it's picked up along the way.
Well, and I know just from the perspective of like the Chesapeake Bay and what the watershed itself is trying to do, like Department of Agriculture has gotten involved with looking at the way that the pesticides are rolling off into the streams, which are feeding the creeks, which are feeding the Susquehanna, which is feeding the bay. So, everybody's, I think, trying to make strides and steps in the right direction.
Yeah,
so I think we're probably seeing an uptick.
Improvements being made. Even when I was, working for the plumbing contractor, they were always bidding on sewage treatment plants and stuff like that. I mean, they're updating all that stuff.
Yeah.
But there's still, just the stuff that goes on a private level, the stuff that people do on their properties. It's never gonna. I don't know. I mean,
I have a
river,
creek,
and it's
right. I have a creek in my backyard that floods, and when it floods, it's chocolate milk.
Yeah,
like it's chocolate milk, and it gets really high, and I know exactly where it's going, and it's going to run into the Susquehanna, and like I have neighbors up and downstream from me that do exactly that. They're throwing fertilizers and weird stuff on their lawns, and
I mean, there's still people that change their oil and dump it in their backyard, flush it down the toilet. I mean, there's just, and it's kind of, there's just a lot of, I wish people would get their act together.
Yeah.
And stop freaking littering and polluting. Because
I don't think that those people have been out and seen the majestic Susquehanna in the morning like that. I don't think they've been adapted to, the outdoors. Right. So
they're not. They're definitely not appreciating it. But
it's kind of out of sight, out of mind if they don't see it. I mean, it's not. They look at it as it's going downriver. It's not going to affect me.
While we're on the topic, though, Joe, some of the stuff that you're noticing with the fish, and maybe we could talk about something that I saw as I was scrolling through your Instagram today. It kind of piqued my interest. And this is something I think that we could do and talk about for people who do care, people who have seen that stuff,
right?
The way that river looks in the morning.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about the deal with the Whopper Popper, what you were trying to push there with pulling that treble hook off the back of a Whopper Popper.
Oh, the Whopper Popper epidemic. Man, that Whopper Popper. Well, the Whopper Popper is another bait like what you were talking about earlier, that the fish actually did get educated to, and it's not as effective as it used to be. When that thing first came out, I mean, first they had a 190 and a 130, and we screwed around with that, and we caught some monster bass. This would have been like 2013, 2014. I mean, I kind of kept it under my hat, and we used it in a couple tournaments, and it was just a phenomenal bait. And then in 2015, they came out with the 90 size Whopper Popper. And as soon as I saw that thing, I was like, dude, that is going to be money, because I couldn't have my clients throw the bigger ones around. For the most part, like, you had to throw it on a casting rod, and a lot of the guys I take out they just want to fish spinning. Like, I just wasn't set up for it. But the 90, on the other hand, it's a little, it's a tiny little. It was perfect. It was 5/8 of an ounce. You could put it on a spinning rod. It cast like a bullet. And dude, it was ridiculous. I mean, you could go out over the summer and throw that thing in any direction, and those fish would just unload on it. But I mean, even that first year, I saw right off the bat, those fish always eat that thing head first. I mean, 9 times out of 10, they're eating that thing head first, and they're getting hooked by the front treble hook. And the back end of the bait is hanging out the side of the fish's mouth. And when they're jumping and thrashing and, carrying on like they do over the summer, it just would happen all the time where the treble hook would end up stuck in the, one eye or the other. And now we kind of there's so many one-eyed fish out there swimming around because of that dang Whopper Popper.
I've even seen the back one stuck in a gill plate once or twice, wrapped around the back of the gill plate.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, it's for a guy that works all week long and it's just jonesing to get out on the river and catch some fish on top water. You're not going to talk him into taking that rear hook off.
But I actually think, Joe, that the Whopper Popper works better without the rear hook, because the Whopper Popper actually can have the rear hook foul the plopper tail.
Well, I was going to ask how it changed the performance.
Yeah.
That's
I think it works better without it,
I'm
too.
sorry to know.
But I mean, I've taken them off, like, for when I'm guiding or whatever. I'll take them off, and guys will miss a couple fish, and then they're like, "Well, you took the freaking hook off.
Right.
Put the hook back on. I'm not coming out here to watch fish blow up on a bait." And I'm like, they're just not hitting it. Like, they don't hit it like they used to. Those fish will react on it and come up, and then it's at like the last minute they turn, and they'll explode like 6 inches away from it and never touch that bait. I mean, it's not always like that, but it's just it's not as effective as it used to be. So, you know, when guys are seeing these blow-ups and not hooking up with them, then they get frustrated and they're always like, "Oh, put the hook back on, put the hook back on." And I end up doing it sometimes, but I agree with you. I think that if a fish is going to hit that thing head first, you're better off just having one big treble hook on the front, and you don't want anything hanging off the back. I mean, the rear treble hook, it fouls up on the tail, and it also, if there's any kind of floating debris coming down through the river, grass, whatever, it's going to foul up on that too.
Yeah.
And it's one less hook that gets stuck in your hand once you actually get that fish. Like if you're wet waiting or whatever, I mean, there's so many guys I've seen pictures of that, you know, they're waiting, fishing Whopper Poppers, and they get that fish close to them and it's carrying on, and it throws the hook, that rear hook, into their hand, and now you got a fish pin, do you?
Years ago, when, like you said, when I first started throwing that, you know, not many people knew what it was on my lake, and it was even baffling me. I was catching so many fish.
Right.
Sometimes 3-4 strikes, the same fish would hit it 3 times.
Yeah.
Before I hooked up to it, and I actually had one 5-pound bass come up, hit it, spit it out, and before it, like, the second it hit the water, it hit it again. And I've never actually seen a bass hit a hard bait twice. And now, I mean,
it went nuts over it.
Oh, it drove it crazy. But now, like, I got, like, just this past summer, I have a guy in a pontoon boat come by me and say, he looked at me and he's like, "Hey," I'm like, "Hey, buddy, what are you catching them on?" You know, we just talk, and he's like, "I got a Whopper Popper. You ever heard of one?" And I went, "Uh-huh."
Yeah, never ain't.
They don't react to it as much now.
No, they don't. I mean, in my opinion, it was the tone of that prop coming through the water. You know how they call it a Whopper Popper for a reason.
Yeah.
It catches whoppers, and when it comes through the water, it makes that plopping noise.
Yeah.
And the fish they never heard it before.
Well, I mean, even before that, though, the era of the heat and spook, like you said earlier, things of the past can come back.
Mm-hmm.
Something that I pulled out of an old tackle box that really worked good for me this year that I didn't tell many people about was I brought back the Rebel Crayfish. And
oh, yeah.
Like, people forgot about them. And there was a time frame in history where they were the Whopper Popper. Like, that was the smallmouth, the dynamite. And
absolutely.
So I brought back, remember the green one with the orange belly?
Oh.
Yeah.
And I couldn't keep fish from hitting it. Although it was the little one, and I don't think it was working well. It was like swimming sideways. So I'm in the market for a couple medium bigger ones if anybody finds them at the flea market, because they were smashing that this summer. But we threw them for like a couple years, and then all of a sudden they didn't work no more.
Yeah.
But now fish have a time gap where
it'll be cyclical. You know.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It
does work. You know, companies will make a variation of, you know, something, you know, an old school lure that used to do really well, but they'll bring it back with improvements, and it's just lights out all over again. And that's kind of what the Whopper Popper was. I mean, Whopper prop baits like that have been around for years.
Mm-hmm.
He changed it up and put that rubber tail on it that had a cup in it, and it just made a different noise coming through the water. And the same, you know, with freaking.
Well, the jitterbug was like that when it came.
Yeah, jitterbug. They had the jitterbug, and then Jackal came out with the pompadour.
Yeah.
You know, it's
the hula popper, you know,
just all that stuff. Yeah,
Whisker
they're always
down.
making improvements and stuff. Always, you know,
Whisker Dews.
It gets put on the shelf, yeah, and then circles back around again.
So my friend Logan that we talked about actually has. So we did an experiment, and I don't know if he wants me to talk about this, but he's like
doesn't mind.
He's like my adopted son, so I can say whatever I want.
Thanks, Logan.
So Logan has one of these amazing jobs where he can, not only does he, work at a bait shop, but he can make jigs and make baits. And, recently he's got some pour molds, and we wanted to see literally if the TRD was the Elastec but he poured it in regular plastic. Same exact thing. And he's been testing that. And believe it or not, I think has something to do when they grab it and feel it. It has a different texture to it because Although he's been doing very well on the baits he's been pouring, they seem to hold on better or strike harder on that last deck. So,
they hold on. It just has a totally different feel. That's why I was saying earlier, it's like the closest thing you can get to fishing live bait. When a fish comes up and noses around a Laztec, if they grab it and spit it back out, 9 times out of 10 they're going to come back and grab it again, just because it feels like a soft, freaking succulent minnow, or like a soft shell crab.
Exactly.
Yeah, the stuff is freaking amazing. It's just hard to compete against that with in the soft plastic world.
And so what's exciting about the fishing world, and between us and anybody who fishes the Susquehanna, it's always exciting. I say this all the time: is they can't come out with anything new, and they always do. So it's exciting to see what is new coming out. But I actually have, I think we've rolled up on time, Joe. Unfortunately, where I have to move on.
You got to ask the question though.
Well, we've started this new segment recently called the Fast Five.
Fast Five.
And so there's 4 of us. So we ask you these 5 questions, as fast as we can. So it's off the top of your head.
Yep. Just a quick answer. There's no wrong answer.
It's not a test. It's just, from your heart.
And you're already warmed up. We do this at the end on purpose.
Okay.
So I'm going to start with, what is your bucket list? What is your bucket list fishing trip, or what's on your bucket list?
Bucket list for fishing, I'd say peacock bass in the Amazon.
Thank you.
Nice.
What makes you happy?
What makes you happy? I guess what will make you happiest in life, I guess, is making other people happy, bringing joy to others.
My man.
That's a good answer.
My man.
We haven't heard that one yet. Good
I
answer.
like that one.
And you gave that answer to the right guy.
There's a lot of things that bring you happiness, but I don't think anything really brings you happiness like seeing somebody else happy and knowing you had something to do with that.
I don't know if I could get a better answer from a guest.
I don't ever see a more truer fisherman in life than somebody who likes to watch other people succeed in catching fish because he's already gotten to the point where he knows he can.
Yeah.
So he gives that gives that feeling and that glory to other people.
Anything in life. I mean, fishing too, but just that's what brings you happiness. I mean, that'll make you sleep good at night if you know you did something good for somebody.
All right.
You did something to improve somebody's life, or just, did something good in a day.
Yeah, I agree.
Good answer. All right. What's one thing you do every day to prepare for your outdoor lifestyle?
I don't know. That's a tough one. I mean, the one thing I do every day is drink a cup of coffee in the morning to prepare for my outdoor lifestyle. Yeah, I mean, I pretty much wake up and throw the stuff in the boat and drive to the ramp and meet people to go fishing.
Boom.
The only things that are consistent every day is, drinking a cup of coffee, and I usually eat a bowl of cereal in the morning. Sometimes I'll stop and get breakfast, but it's quicker and easier. I get more sleep if I just eat a bowl of cereal.
That's the secret to catching 100 bass a day.
Fuel the tank.
I mean,
eating Lucky Charms
coffee
to get
and
lucky.
Lucky Charm, man.
Right.
Jeez.
I thought he was going to say put gas in the boat. I thought that was going to be.
That's not every day, though.
Yeah.
Joe,
Yeah, I mean, I really had to think about that. Every day, what is one thing that I do every day?
what's one thing you can't live without in the outdoors?
I guess a fishing rod.
My man.
All right, Joe.
3 guests in a row have said that. I love that answer.
Yeah.
Every true fisherman has said their fishing rod. Yep.
That's awesome. Last, but definitely not least, and I think most appropriate to end the show out, what are you most proud of, Joe?
Most proud of? I don't know. I guess just, I wouldn't say proud. I don't know. I don't know if I want to be a proud person. I just enjoy what I do. Most proud.
What floats your boat then?
Water.
What's that?
What floats your personal boat?
My personal boat?
Yeah, not Rockzilla. what gets you up in the morning besides fishing? What makes you want to get up and put your shoes on and brush your teeth and face another day?
Just to live, man. Just to, every day is an adventure. You don't know what's going to happen. Just kind of go out open-eyed and hope for something, a doorway to open or something cool to happen.
Perfect.
Amen.
I have a question.
That's an honest answer. Thank you.
I have a question too. Maybe the only guy we've ever had on this podcast that can answer it.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Do you believe there is a 7-pound smallmouth in the Susquehanna?
I have a client. There has to be. The Susquehanna's, I don't know, 462 miles long or something like that. That's a lot of water. I have a client that I take out, a friend, a local guy who lives up in Duncannon. And back in 1981, he caught a state record smallmouth that he held the record for, I don't know, a number of years. It was 7 pounds, 1 ounce.
Wow.
So at one point in time, there was a 7-pounder out there. It was 23 inches. He actually caught it on, of all things, a creek chub.
Yeah.
He said he was fishing for muskies, and yeah. He's got the mount of it. He says he's going to give it to me at some point in time. But that's the biggest smallmouth that guys tell stories of monsters, but that is a verified, state record on a plaque.
Well, that is a monster smallmouth.
That is.
Giant fish. I mean, it's hard to wrap when you see. He brought the mount into a local restaurant up there in Duncannon, I don't know, 2 years ago or something like that, and just looking at that thing and trying to wrap your head around a fish that big being out there in the river.
It's like a baby pig.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy, man. I mean, it's just bananas. It is so freaking big. A 7-pound smallmouth is big anywhere, but coming out of the Susquehanna,
it's got to be like a duffel bag because smaller smallmouths are like footballs.
Yeah.
So I'm imagining like a duffel bag.
It was 23 inches and it was fat.
Yeah.
Just a big, thick fish.
Nice.
Well, we sincerely hope you catch one, Joe.
Yeah. Joe, how
Someday.
Catch 2.
if people want to follow you on social media or book a trip with you, what's the best way to get in contact with you?
Social media, I mean, most of what I do is on Instagram. I do some stuff on Facebook, but Joe Raymond or Susquehanna Smallmouth Guide. We have a website, Susquehanna Smallmouth Guides, or if you do a Google search for fishing on the Susquehanna, we usually pop up somewhere at the top of the list. And you can send an email through the website, or there's a phone number you can call.
Cool. All right, brother. We appreciate you taking the hour to chat with
Joe,
us.
thank you very much, buddy.
Great. Learn more about the
guys.
river, learn more about you. So.
Next time we talk to him, I want to talk about boat builds.
No, next time we talk to him, we'll be talking to him from the deck of his boat.
And
That'd be all right,
that's better.
too.
I like that.
Yeah,
too.
that'd be awesome. If we could, maybe we'll set something up and try and get out and do some fishing this year.
Good deal.
One rod, Stevie.
Well,
one
we'll see.
each. There's a whole
see.
pile of you guys, though.
One rod, and we do Lake Nipigon rules. One treble hook only, barbless.
That was tough. I have to say that.
I
was
tell you
tough.
what, I'm gonna start fishing more like that.
It makes it challenging.
I like it.
All right, Joe. Thanks, brother.
Thank you, Joe.
Yeah,
Appreciate
man.
it, bud.
Absolutely, guys. I enjoyed it.
Appreciate you, Joe.
You know what I enjoy when I'm out fishing on the Susquehanna?
What's that?
Some jerky.
Ooh, shut
But
your
not
mouth.
just any jerky.
Moses Family Jerky?
That would be it.
Where should we get that at, buddy?
Well, you could get it on mfjerky.com.
Nice.
But you can use Jerky Pursuits 15 and actually get yourself 15% off some of that jerky.
That's crazy.
Come on.
I feel bad.
Teriyaki's my favorite.
I don't know
Looking
why
forward to the
Dakota
sweet
keeps
sticks coming
doing
up.
that.
I mean, if you drank coffee, if you're one of those people, you could get some coffee from them. I hear it's really good.
I hear good things about that pecan stuff from Will all the time.
What's
so
that
I'm
new
sure
stuff?
it's
The
good.
breakfast blend.
Yeah.
Oh, David Kyle's constantly raving over that breakfast blend.
Yeah.
Get on over there to mfjerky.com and get all that stuff.
Well, I tell you what, too. I thought of something today, and I brought this up last week about the bow mitt being used for my fishing rod.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
In the 40-mile-an-hour winds today when I was out, I could have used it because it was freezing cold in that wind. That wind cut through you.
Yeah.
But if you wanted a bow mitt to go hunting late season,
Yeah,
when you
buddy.
got a day left, where would you go find one of those?
You got to run over real quick
Yes.
to betterthehunt.com.
BetterTheHunt.com.
Check out all the cool stuff they got going on and grab you a bow mitt. Stevie, what would they do to get a little bit of a price break on the bow mitt?
What? Another price
Another
break?
price break. 20% off. Use coupon code RutRiver20.
We got to quit this, guys.
Yeah, I know it. And I think our buddy Randy's got some new products coming out.
There's some things in the works.
Yeah.
We'll wait and
I
see
saw
what's coming
something
up.
from
I don't want to
Technically,
steal any
we
of his
should be
thunder.
able to talk about it since he's in Kentucky right now at ATA. But
There may be some legal issues. We'll have to. I'll review the contract.
We'll have
and
to
see if we
speak
can-
with our legal team.
Yeah, we'll get our guys on it.
All right.
All right, gentlemen. Another good week.
when we're not catching smallmouth on the river
Yeah.
Or eating jerky.
or eating Moses family jerky,
Uh-huh.
freezing in the cold wind. Ryan, where can they find us?
Well, as always, they can find us at rutandriverpursuits.com. The podcast itself available on Apple Podcasts and my new favorite,
Spotify.
I love Spotify.
I do too.
Spotify's the best.
You wouldn't think you could fall in love with a podcast app.
But it's a good-looking app.
It is.
I don't know what to tell you.
It is.
And, of course, available on all your social media properties, Facebook, Instagram, and the Twitters. Just search Rut and River Pursuits. Mm-hmm.
Check out the YouTubes.
YouTube, Rut and River Pursuit Podcast. Love it.
All right,
All
fellas.
right, boys. Go and get.
Nice. This was a fun night.
See ya.
Love you all. Carp eat mulberries.
Yeah, if you've ever caught a carp, I mean, you know how hard they pull.
I thought, Stevie, I thought you were speaking Latin there.
Yeah.
Carpe mulberry.
Mulberries, yeah.
How mad were you this year?
Oh, man, I was fit to be tied. What floats your boat, then?
Water. What's the D-bomb, bud? Oh, damn.
Yeah.
Well, that's okay. It's what the fish say when they swim into the wall.
I was listening to the one where I was telling a story.